Dear friends, Henry, Gordon and James have been grumpy lately. They were jealous because Thomas had been asked to visit the National Railway Museum in York. The Fat Controller was afraid they would go on strike, but they didn't. "If Thomas wants to be a museum piece," they said to each other, "what's that to do with us?" Meanwhile, Thomas was enjoying himself. I hope you will enjoy reading about how he did so. The author. "I don't believe it," muttered Gordon furiously. "What's Thomas got that an important engine like me hasn't? Tell me that! Gallivanting off to museums! Bah!" "He is old," said James. "If the Fat Controller says he can be a museum piece, why should we worry?" "It's not fair, though," grumbled Henry. For a chance like this, he wouldn't have minded being a museum piece himself. The jealous engines all ignored Thomas when they saw him at the junction. Thomas didn't care, he was too excited. "Why me?" Thomas asked Percy and Toby. "Fancy the National Railway Museum people at, where is it, York, wanting me to go there. They've never even seen me." "Oh yes they have," said Percy. "On television," added Toby. "The Fat Controller told us about it." He and Percy wanted to go with Thomas, but they knew that someone had to stay and run the branch line while he was away. "How much longer till we go?" Thomas asked his driver every morning. "One day less than when you asked before," laughed his driver. "Anyone would think you wanted to be a museum piece." Thomas grinned. "Gordon, Henry and James are just jealous," he chuckled. "Who else is at this museum? Is Flying Scotsman there? Or Duck's friend, City of Truro?" "We shall have to wait and see," said the fireman. "I'll be very surprised if there isn't someone there you can remember from the old days." And that, of course, made Thomas more excited than ever. At last the day came. A large crowd came to the junction to see Thomas off, and the Fat Controller was there too. "Goodbye, Thomas," he said. "Enjoy yourself and be a credit to our railway." Everyone gave 3 cheers, and Thomas set off. They ran across the island and over the bridge leading to the other railway. It was a slow journey, but at last they reached a place Thomas's driver called Carnforth, where they rested for the night in a big shed. Next day they went on. At Skipton, Thomas stopped for a drink and to let a goods train overtake them. While they waited, it began to rain. In a signal box a little way ahead, the signalman opened his level crossing gate for Thomas and set his signals to clear. Suddenly he heard a crack and then a rattle from the level crossing. The lock on the gate had broken and the wind was swinging the gate across the rails. Steam appeared above the trees as Thomas drew near. "Wow!" exclaimed the signalman, and quickly resetting the signal to danger, he ran to mend the gate. Thomas had never felt happier. His fire was bright, and even the rain didn't depress him. They neared a signal. Its arm was up, showing that the line ahead was clear. Away we go, puffed Thomas happily. He was just passing the signal when he heard a clang as the signal arm fell to danger. "Whoa, Thomas!" cried the driver, and put the brakes hard on. "What?" Thomas began, but then he saw, just ahead, a heavy level crossing gate swinging towards him across the line. The signalman tried to stop it, but the gate was wet, and it slipped out of his hand. "Oh!" groaned Thomas as he skidded along the rails. "Help! I must stop!" But the rain had made the rails slippery, and he couldn't. He slithered helplessly along, and was still moving when he reached the level crossing. With a loud crack, the gate broke against his buffer beam. "Ouch!" said Thomas, and stopped. The signalman ran to his telephone, and then directed Thomas into a siding where an inspector examined him. His buffer beam was bent, and one of his buffers was broken. "You can't go on like that," said the inspector. "Not on the railway, anyhow." "But I'm supposed to be in York tomorrow," wailed Thomas. "I know that," said the inspector. "Never mind, leave it to me, I'll see what can be done." And with that, Thomas had to be content. Thomas had to stay in the siding for the rest of the day. His fire went out and he grew colder and colder. The rain fell more heavily, and what had begun as a splendid day began to turn into a disaster. "I wish I was in my nice shed," he said to himself miserably. At last the inspector returned. "Cheer up, Thomas," he said. "You'll be at the museum tomorrow, and they have promised to mend your front end in their workshop." "Thank you, sir," said Thomas, "but if I can't run on rails, how can I get there?" "It's all fixed," replied the inspector. "A lorry is coming for you tomorrow." Thomas was horrified. "A lorry?" he stammered. "That's right," said the inspector. "It'll be here at 8 o'clock sharp." Thomas slept badly that night. He kept wondering what Gordon, Henry and James would say if they knew he had finished his journey on a lorry. He almost thought he could hear them laughing. Next morning the driver and fireman came early. A diesel shunter came to push Thomas out of his siding and along towards the road, where they found the lorry waiting. A steel cable was fastened to his coupling. The lorry driver started a winch, and in no time at all, it seemed, Thomas was perched on the lorry. How undignified, he thought, but he found as they went along that he had a marvellous view of the countryside and time to enjoy it too. But Thomas soon began to feel bored. At last houses began to appear on either side of the road. "Perhaps this is York," thought Thomas hopefully. It was, but the driver was unsure of his way. He parked the lorry and went to find a telephone. The man wearing a flat-topped cap with a yellow band around it came up to Thomas. "Hello," said Thomas. "Humph," said the man. He wrote something in his notebook and went round to the front of the lorry. When the lorry driver came back, Thomas heard him say something, then slam the cab door crossly. Soon they reached a large building with rails running into it. Thomas was unloaded and the lorry drove away. Thomas looked about him. He had arrived. When his driver and fireman came, Thomas told them about the man with the flat cap. They laughed loudly. "How do you do it, Thomas?" spluttered the driver when he could speak. "That will make the Fat Controller's day. Thomas booked for parking." The museum people were as good as their word. Thomas went at once to the workshop, where his buffer beam was soon straightened and a new buffer bolted on. In the workshop was a green engine, like Flying Scotsman but smaller. He was called Green Arrow. "My brothers and I were built to run fast good trains," he said, "but we did it so well that they let us pull expresses too in the end. Now I'm the only one of my sort left." Green Arrow was so friendly that when Thomas was mended, he was sorry to leave him. But back at the great railway show, he was thrilled to see instead one of Stepney's brothers, Box Hill, an engine he remembered from the old days. Thomas was moved to a special position. "There's no doubt about it," said his driver. "You're a star attraction." "Is that being a credit to the Fat Controller?" asked Thomas. He was anxious to make up for the parking ticket. One morning, Thomas's driver arrived in great excitement. "We're to give rides on the demonstration line," he said. Thomas was delighted. The 3 demonstration lines were different sizes. One was narrower than Thomas's, and the third was used by a very wide engine called Iron Duke. "This is broad gauge," he explained. "The Great Western Railway used it until about 100 years ago." Thomas wondered if Duck knew about broad gauge. It would be nice to tell him something about the Great Western, he thought. The engines had to take great care because of the many visitors. Thomas was anxious. Some people were not as careful as they should have been. Thomas had never seen such crowds. "We must watch out," he told his driver. "What would happen if a child got onto the line?" "Don't you worry, Thomas," replied the driver. "There are plenty of good strong barriers and we'll take care." But Thomas did worry. He was afraid that in an emergency he might not be able to stop soon enough. Next morning Thomas felt better. The sun was shining and he was looking forward to talking to Iron Duke again. He chunted happily backwards and forwards along the demonstration line all day. Then, nearly at closing time, it happened. Thomas saw something fly through the air and land on the rails in front of him. His driver saw it too. He put the brakes hard on. Whistled Thomas in alarm. "I must stop! I must!" Thomas shuddered to a halt, and a great cloud of steam wheeshed noisily from his cylinder cocks. but he couldn't stop before he hit the bundle. Burst! Sandwiches and crisps flew in all directions, while pop from a broken bottle fizzed over Thomas's wheels. In the crowd, a child, frightened by the steam, cried loudly. "I want to go home, Mummy, now!" screamed the child. "You noisy great engine!" shouted his mother, waving her fist at Thomas. "I'm going to see the manager!" "Oh dear," thought Thomas, "that's not the way to be a credit to the Fat Controller." "You did very well," his driver comforted. "What a relief it was only a lunch pack and not a child on the line." The fireman was inspecting Thomas. "Hey, look at this," he called. The driver went to see. "You damaged your brakes when you stopped suddenly," he told Thomas. "No more work until they're fixed, I'm afraid. Never mind, if the people here today have learned that engines can't stop at once, that's a good thing." Thomas hoped they had. The engines were excited. There were to be some special rail tours to the seaside, and no one knew which engine would be chosen to pull them. "It ought to be me," observed Mallard. "After all, that seaside place helped to pay for my repairs." The others thought someone else should have a chance. Thomas knew he would not be chosen, but he enjoyed listening to the others arguing. He was pleased in the end when it was decided to give the trips to Green Arrow. When Green Arrow returned from the first tour, he said he had never seen so many people. Soon there was talk of putting on extra trains, but this was not possible. "All we can do is add extra coaches," they said. "But then, Green Arrow can't pull a train that heavy all on his own." "Of course I can," he scoffed. "My brothers and I did during the war." "Can I help?" asked Thomas. The man in charge stared. "Don't see why not," he said. In the morning, Thomas's fireman arrived early. Thomas's fire was lit, and while the warmth crept through his boiler, the fireman made sure all his moving parts were well oiled. Behind, Green Arrow was being prepared too, and when they were both ready, they set off to find their coaches. The station platform was jammed with an admiring crowd, which didn't seem to get any smaller even after a trainload of people were in their seats. Thomas was coupled in front. He was pleased. He liked to see where he was going. At the seaside station, Thomas was turned round so he could go in front again. After a rest, the engine set off once more. A ruined abbey stood at a place where the line curved beside a river. A crowd had gathered to wave and cheer, but Thomas wasn't watching them. Looking ahead, he had seen something strange. "Stop! Stop!" he whistled in alarm. The train was heavy and hard to stop, but they managed it just in time. Now everyone was able to see that, in front of Thomas, the rail near the river was lower than the one on the other side. "The water has undermined the embankment," said the inspector. "I'll go to the signal box and sort things out." Buses came for the passengers, but it was late before the men decided it would be safe to use the other track. Together, the engines pushed the coaches back to a crossover. On his own, Thomas slowly crept past the landslip. Then, very carefully, Green Arrow pulled the empty coaches by, and together they brought the train back to York. A few days later, a party of important-looking people came into the museum. One was the man in charge, and behind him was the Fat Controller. "Oh dear," thought Thomas, "they've come to take me away for frightening that child." But the Fat Controller was smiling. The man in charge held up his hand for silence. "Thomas," said the man in charge, "your controller told us you are a really useful engine. He is right. For saving a nasty accident the other day, we have decided you should become an honorary member of the National Railway Collection. This special plate will remind you of your visit to us. Ladies and gentlemen, 3 cheers for Thomas the Tank Engine." The noise nearly raised the roof. "Well done, Thomas," smiled the Fat Controller. "I knew you would be a credit to our railway.